LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Now listen. When kids are growing up, they will inevitably latch on to idols whom they want to emulate or be. Movie stars, a beloved aunt or uncle, and especially for little boys, sports figures. In 1969, I was 6 years old, living in Keokuk, Iowa, and I decided I wanted nothing more than to be Lily Tomlin. She had just debuted and was a huge breakout star on the comedy show Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and I loved her. Her characters, as out there as some of them were, always seemed to come from a real place with that extra magic of specific creative details that Lily and her longtime wife Jane Wagner came up with. I had other comedians I admired as well, Tom Lehrer, George Carlin, Flip Wilson, but I wanted to be Lily Tomlin. Well, except for the lesbian part. When I was learning cursive, I was supposed to write the T in Tony with this big swooping, almost like a big J, but instead I totally stole the way Lily writes the T in Tomlin, and I still write my first name that way. Of course, I owned all of Lily's records, played them constantly, and could recite them verbatim, in character and from start to finish. I acted them out as often as possible, which would inevitably elicit a "Tony, act your age" from my folks. I started creating my own characters, and of course, like Lily, I had to create a kid character who I named Kippy Fickett after this bespectacled, hair-parted-in-the-middle rugrat who lived down the street from my Grandma May in Sioux City, Iowa. The ironic part of being a young actor for me in my early 20s was that I was 6'1", in pretty good shape, with fantastic, glamorous 80s hair. My type was leading man. But when I looked into the mirror, I saw Ernestine Tomlin, Lily's telephone operator character with a scrunched-up face and a 1940s dress and wig. I created a bunch of other characters in addition to Kippy: Mildred Hansen, Chuck Dresden, Esther Adele, and when I was in college, I had headshots taken of these characters as well as my leading man pictures. I pull out the proof sheets from these photo sessions, and though they are amusing, I was living in trees, as nobody in a million years would have hired me as those characters when I was 21. I auditioned for leading man parts and booked some of them, but secretly I felt like I was living a big lie. I auditioned for Curly in Oklahoma and felt like a fraud, as I probably would have made a better Aunt Eller. In other words, I always felt like a closet character actor. One of those actors who plays the concerned doctor, concerned lawyer, or perpetually cranky neighbor. Well, that's me in real life. The good thing is that as we get older and we age, the young buck who got the girl in those stories isn't so young anymore. We can either fight it, do the best we can, or we can go all Brendan Fraser in The Whale. In looking back, it's kind of sad that I really didn't know what I had when I had it and wanted something else. And even though in later years, when I got something else, I realized I kind of longed for what I didn't know I had to begin with. Oh well, youth is wasted on the young. Over a decade ago, I tried some Botox on the scowl lines on my face, and it did nothing but deplete my bank account. I went to a different Beverly Hills dermatologist who was like some hood rat drug pusher and asked me if I wanted some Botox. I told her I'd had it one time and it didn't work. She said, "Well, that's because they didn't use enough," and pointed to her own face. "See this? If I didn't use enough of it, I'd look like you." Gee, thanks, lady. I let the scowl lines stay and just try to smile and look surprised more to counteract them. When I was growing up back in Iowa, my best friend Tony and I didn't pay any attention to what we were supposed to be or what age we were supposed to act. Leading men, character men. Hell, if we were short an actress for a Super 8 movie we were making, we'd play those parts too. If my dad asked me why we were shooting a scene out in the backyard in which I was dressed as an old landlady channeling Ruth Gordon in Every Which Way But Loose, I just threw the Monty Python guys into the bus. "Dad, they play all the parts, men and women too. Now get out of the shot, old man, or throw a wig on." It seems like Tony and I always had some kind of scheme that involved us not acting our age and separating the kids in the neighborhood from their babysitting money. All in the name of entertainment, of course. And the neighbor kids loved our movies and plays we created for them. We were like Lucy and Ethel of Urbandale, Iowa. We even got my brother and my cousin Matthew in drag to play a mother and daughter, Bea and Amy, in this knockoff film we did of the John Waters movie Pink Flamingos. I played Divine in that movie. Oh, and Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, it's a long story. Even in my 6th decade, my little brother Tim and I get together and suddenly turn into adolescent boys, imitating our relatives, our mean auntie, or these characters we made up and used to improvise when we were kids. Our father just rolls his eyes and says, you two get together and just regress. I know, Dad, act my age. But at this stage of the game, what does acting my age mean? Wear white socks and sandals and take daily Metamucil? I guess part of acting your age is doing adult things. When Bill and I got married before Prop 8 passed, we put on our adult pants and put our estate plans together, a trust, will, healthcare directives. The attorney sends you home with a worst-case list of scenarios of all the bad things that can happen to your health, and you need to state how you want them handled. It is so depressing to have to sit down and make these decisions that I highly recommend filling it out during cocktail hour. But we did it, and now it's done, and the predominant answer was drugs, drugs, and more drugs. Another adult thing we thought we'd do, sort of the last one on the being a grown-up bucket list, was to prepay our cremations. Unlike our neighbor 2 doors down who went to meet Jesus at 61 with none of his affairs in order, we thought we'd take care of it and pay for it in advance. We called the local funeral parlor who had processed several of our good friends' loved ones. The nice lady who answered said, "We can help you with that. In fact, we're having an open house this Saturday, so stop by." Open house? I can think of 100 better ways to spend my Saturday, like washing windows and screens, sleeping, or watching paint dry, but we said, sure, we'll stop by. It was a rainy Saturday here in LA, and there was one car in the parking lot at the funeral parlor. Obviously, not a big turnout. We walked in, and they had a table with a big box of Krispy Kreme donuts, a container of hot coffee, and a funeral already set up in their big room, complete with a picture of some old guy with a banner next to it that said, "Beloved Father." Turns out that was all fake. Even the picture of the supposed dead guy, it was a print job for some actor. The donuts weren't fake, thank God, and since we were the only ones who showed up for the open house, we had 2 each. Delicious. Apparently, the salesman who actually handles making prearrangements didn't make it to the open house either, which meant another trip back to the funeral parlor. That time, however, there were no donuts, only a credit card reading machine. We've done our adult duties, and now I officially want to start working on not acting my age as I charge forward into this decade. A couple of months ago, I went to a financial planner that I had engaged while still in my 50s. Now at 61, I told him suddenly this stuff is getting real. Bill thinks I'm obsessing about it, but I am a show business person. I like to rehearse. In fact, I started having what I call retirement rehearsal days. Now, these are not when I'm vacationing. Rather, these are days where I only do what I want to do, and no work is involved. And on these wonderful retirement rehearsal days, I create stuff, podcasts, a novel I'm working on. I work out, do yoga, and walk the dog. I read, work in the garden, touch base with friends, even just sit and do nothing but listen to records like we used to do after high school. And it is fantastic. My brother and his wife think these days are hysterical, and Bill rolls his eyes at them. But I Googled retirement rehearsal, and it's a real thing. So laugh all you want, bitches. It's almost like circling back to Lucy and Ethel in Urbandale, Iowa. My old friend Tony said that he is thinking of our upcoming retirements, aka not having to work full time, as the equivalent of high school graduation for old people. What a wonderful and apt metaphor. God knows my summer after high school graduation was scary, with some uncertainty, but filled with endless possibilities, many of which I explore on my retirement rehearsal days. And now that I am truly a character actor, I can play whatever I want to play. In fact, on my next retirement rehearsal day, I may have to go pull out my silly glasses, part my 3 hairs in the middle, and do some Kippy Ficket improvisations. LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Ba 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 ba.